in public speaking because of the help and support they have received from Toastmasters membership. However, there are not many that were able to do it as easy because of their language barrier. On August 2015, the new world champion of public speaking was named as Mohammed Quatani, I think is his saying, and he was from Saudi Arabia. He could not speak until he was 6 years old. But this year, despite his speech problems and a language barrier, he became the world champion of public speaking. He said afterwards, "Words can be your power. You can change a life, inspire a nation, and make the world a beautiful place." Tonight, Toastmaster Machado will help us find the best way to help and support non-native English speakers that are members of this club, Boca Raton Toastmasters, with the participation of a panel discussion. Please help me welcome Toastmaster Ilona Machado.
Good evening. I was really surprised to find when I was reading the story, and by the way, you can too if you will become a member in a November magazine. That's where I took the story from. And we all have a little problem pronouncing his name, but I think it's Mohammed Quantani. His story is really inspirational for everyone who wants to improve and become really good at public speaking. Why is that? Well, you heard from Toastmaster Winters, he didn't speak until he was 6 years old. Then he developed severe stutter. And only 6 years later, he became a champion. If he can do it, do you think you can do it too? I think so, and most of us. He also said, because the story is that he actually wasn't the first one, he was the second one for the championship. But the person who won wasn't able to come, so they called him. And he showed up. And he said when he was getting his trophy, "Your mouth can spit venom, or it can mend a broken soul." How deep are those words? So tonight, the reason I brought up that story was because he obviously is a second language speaker. He obviously had some languages ability. And I found the interesting presentation that partially I put it together, after I didn't take the full credit for it, to show you that we're having a little bit different picture of what we're doing to our children. By the way, between the age of maybe 4 and 7, when our children are learning English, here is something that we may be showing to them. So to start, maybe some of you know that English didn't come as being English from the very beginning. It has a lot of different languages in it. And one of them was tribes such as the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. You can Google it and find out. English is made of many languages. And also, it was a lower class that spoke French at some point, and then there was lower class, and the upper class spoke French. So English has a lot of influence from French language. Another thing I want to show you is what the writer said, that the price of the use of speech characteristics or dialect to identify a speaker as belonging to a linguistic subgroup and even racial subgroup. So we're really thinking about racial profiling based on our accents. And, well, the presentation is about Disney movies. We all love them. Not just our children, but all we do. So most of the heroes and heroines, they speak standard American English accent. That we're going to say SAE for short. And guess what? Most villains speak foreign accent. Would you wonder why? Because I do. So to give you 3 examples, Pocahontas, she is the heroine of the good character, she speaks SAE. But if you look at the villain, he speaks Eastern European accent. So in the media, National Association for the Education of Young Children said when children between the age of 2 and 5 become aware of what they hear in regards to a language, such as race, ethnicity, gender, and disability. And aren't we showing them those movies around those ages? So again, race is not distributed equally across Disney film characters. For example, Snow White is Caucasian, but Merida is European background. And actually going back, I forgot to mention that those two characteristics are 50% of Disney characters. If you move on, looking at Asian, Arab, or Hispanic, it's only 11%. I didn't do those statistics. And central characters, heroes, again, standard American English, The Lion King, villains, British English, I'm sorry, Steve. I didn't do this research. And territory characters, cool comic relief characters, foreign accents. I don't know why, but it makes you think. So today I want to do a quick review of what happened between the first panel discussion I did with my members and what we're going to be doing today. Today we're going to be doing 3 items. We're going to be voting on them and they will have 2 to 3 minutes. I'm going to show you in a moment those 3 items of what they're going to say. But I'm showing you right now that one of the things second language speakers do is code switching. And we have to pay attention to it. What it is, we're switching between English and whatever language we are with different vocabularies. We try not to do it, but if you are at the beginning of learning English, not very beginning, but let's say you are high, intermediate, low, advanced, you're going to be still doing that because your brain is processing in your first language. What I did was, at my college, where I teach English, I did a language survey. And the only thing what I asked everybody, because most of them actually were second language speakers to my surprise, was to put whether English is their first language or second language. The results were so different. In example, when they were asking, there were a question asking, do you think it's important to know a second language? So it was a very interesting survey for me to do, to see how people who never learned second language answering the same questions as people who are bilingual. And in conclusion, well, we are talking about accent stereotyping. So this is concerning because Disney mainly markets to children from impressionable age, and stereotypes employed by Disney filmmakers tend to portray minority groups as bad. So here are some tips for Toastmasters. We're going to talk about today. Slowing down your speech, paying attention to regional phrases. Grammarians could point out some mistakes. And as members, be encouraging to all of us. This is what we came out, and this is what our members will talk about today. One of my ideas was to focus on 1 or 2 things, and the evaluator can help by showing a card. Number 2, have a mentor helping you practice backstage with difficult words and not to be afraid of using those difficult words because that's how you're going to learn to pronounce them. And number 3 was to work with the recording. Now, I said to my members that they don't have to limit themselves to those 3. They have to vote on which they think is the most effective, but if in a way they're going to find out maybe there is something more effective than that, then by all means they can come out with it. So please welcome my panel members, and they're going to introduce them to you, and we'll just go from there. They're going to have a board. Please come in. They're going to have a microphone, and like the timer specified, they're going to have 2 to 3 minutes each to write it down and explain why certain number they think will be the most effective to our second language speakers. And so let's start with introducing them, and basically the only thing they're going to tell you where are they from, you're going to hear the accent, so I want you to get familiarized that they are all second language speakers. Let's start with Christian, Toastmaster Christian.
Hello everybody, Toastmasters, most welcome guests. There you go. Thank you, Mr. Winters. Hello, Toastmasters. Well, welcome guests. My name is Christian Bena, and I learned Spanish as a first language. I was born here in the U.S., first generation American, and I moved to Chile and Colombia, Singapore and Australia, which is where I spent the first 10 years of my life. And then eventually I moved back to the U.S. So kind of a gypsy, maybe a villain from a Disney movie, I'm not really sure. But here I am today, and I'm lucky to have had the experience to grow up in the U.S. and learn American English, but I can still speak Spanish enough to order a cortadito from a Cuban stand in Miami. So that's my story. I can really relate to a lot of people who speak multiple languages, and I can really understand what they go through. So I appreciate Ilona having me on the panel. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next one is Toastmaster Alvarez. Just where are you from and how long you are speaking English for?
Good evening to Toastmasters. I'm from Colombia. I learned my second language as an older person when I got here 15 years ago. I have trouble, especially with pronunciation. Certain words, especially U and A, is a big trouble for me. I have trouble between hearing the cat that meows and the cat cutting with scissors. I kind of hearing impaired for those sounds. So I have to read the complete sentence or listen very carefully what you really meant in order to get those sounds correctly. You said that trying to exaggerate words, yes, but I made the pronunciation of the words as imitating your movements of your mouth, but not because I hear the sounds that you're pronouncing. That's a big impairment for me.
Thank you.
That's what it is.
Toastmaster Winters.
My name is Steve Winters. I'm from the UK, as you probably gathered. And English is my first language, but not American English. And as I've explained a few times before, that can cause problems when you're talking about different things which mean quite different in American English to English English.
Yeah, we only talked about this on the last meeting if someone of you attend that British English is actually considered second language. And finally, we have Toastmaster Aaron.
Hello everyone, my name is Arun Manta, and I was born in India, and I've been here about 15 years now. And I still have an accent, and I never really spoke English in India. I only started speaking English when I came over here. But I did grow up studying in English and reading a lot. So I'm still working on improving my language and my speaking abilities.
Thank you. I just want to mention, this is for all of you. I just want to mention quickly that if you are in a certain area that you hear a certain accent, you're actually going to get used to recognize it more. And I wasn't really aware of it until last night. I heard the weather, I said I better go and change my wipers. And I'm going to the store, this kind of other parts. Well, I don't want to be racist, but it's a black African guy, and he asked me, "You are from Europe? You are from Poland?" And I said, "Yes, how do you know?" "Well, I hear this accent all the time here." So no matter what you're raised, no matter where you were born, if you hear a certain accent over and over again, you're going to recognize it. Anyway, so we're going to start with our 2-3 minutes presentations, and then we'll try to tell you which out of the 3 items, or maybe a different one, is important to them to improve speaking as a second language speaker in our club. Let's start with Toastmaster Christian now.
Can you please go through?
Okay, the first one was to talk to the evaluator before each speech to make sure that the evaluator understands what you want to get out of that speaking. For example, you can work on speaking slower, certain vocabulary, and the idea was of having a tablet, maybe such as this one, with this if you are not doing it, to make you aware of that. The second one was have a mentor prep you before the speaking or practice with you difficult words or whatever you are working on. And the third one was to work with the recording and talk to different members after you're speaking, see if you can find a common problem that you can work on.
Okay, so this, just to be clear, these ideas and the ideas we wrote down are one.
You have to choose one that you think is the most effective in your opinion, or choose something else.
For second language student,
Correct.
people. Okay.
Correct.
I think if I had to choose two characteristics, two characteristics that would help a second language speaker embrace the English language and help them express themselves or articulate what they're trying to say, the first one would be to talk slow. It's not a rush to express what you have to say, and I think a lot of times your nerves have a bigger impact on the way that you're able to express yourself non-physically. You have a lot of energy when you're speaking fast, you make mistakes or might slur your words. I think if you just slow down a little bit, the phonetic pronunciation of certain words in English that you might not be familiar with, I think you might be able to hit them more methodically if you just take it slow.
That's very good, but what I want to get is how the evaluator, grammarian, or whoever is involved can help the person do that.
Gotcha. I think a lot of it, out of the courtesy for the speaker, should be conducted after the meeting in private. There's a big sensitivity, in my opinion, that second language people have, and expressing it in public might be a bit dangerous. It's not done very delicately. I think for some pronunciations, it just might, for some people, they would prefer to actually have that done privately. And I think that should be an option for second language speakers to have the grammarian offer it in public, or to actually dissect it a bit more after the session, or maybe on a different day, just to review.
So what you're saying is if, for example, the goal was to speak slower, and let's say the evaluator provided all support, maybe even reminded somehow with the card or whatever, that wasn't happening, that should have been mentioned in the evaluation later on?
I think the second language speaker should have the option, if they want specific instructions on how to improve. I think those things should be addressed separately. Anything else that has to do with their abilities as a speaker in general, of course, let's welcome that into the session. But if you mispronounce a word, it could be taken the wrong way if you're being told how to pronounce it in front of everybody. It's really easy to be belittled, so I just want to be extremely cautious to the feelings of the second language speaker. That's my main point here, is for them to have the option.
Thank you. Next panel discussion, Victoria, or whoever wants to come.
Yes, I think
Thank you.
talking about mentors and evaluators, I think one of the important things is if they can help somehow is giving them some feedback of the rhythm of the language, because, and I consider the same, like giving more in private, but the rhythm of the language is something that is not so easy to get as a second language speaker. So given that, how is the person singing English? Because sometimes Spanish, for example, is a very plain language, and you have to put into English something, a song and a rhythm that naturally doesn't come out. So I do think that it's something that if an evaluator can give some feedback in that aspect, I will, if the person asks, I will encourage them to do that rhythm of the language. Body language is always a strong strength that I have developed because of my lack of vocabulary and a way to pronounce well. So I think that is a strength that I have, so I encourage other speakers, second language speakers, that incorporate that because it gives the meaning that you want to transmit to the audience, and it's a way to grab their attention in a more dynamic way than just staying just straight. And people, if you are not moving exactly the way they are expecting, they are focusing more in what you say than in the way you transfer or the message to the audience.
Well, then, Victoria, just one moment, I want to point out, so we have right now slow speaking, evaluator, and body language. But I want to make sure that all of you don't come up with 4 different ones, because then we are going to meet the goal of it, which is just one major point to talk about. So I want you to listen to each other and see if you can come up with just one that we can agree upon, okay?
I do think that the speed I do think that the speed and pauses are important, but it's more a personal, it's also part of the personality. So each one, a person can speak very fast and transmit, but I think it's part of more the personality. For a second language speaker, I do think it's more difficult. But I do think that a mentor or a person that can, in private, helps them with mispronunciation, a grammarian can talk to the person, the second language, oh, do you want me to help you in this pronunciation? But do that all in private, because when I just started Toastmaster, I have a mentor and she helped me in this area, but I was very sensitive to any feedback, because I knew it's a disadvantage on my part, so I feel that I wasn't reaching the status of the group, which at the same time is something that you don't want to have, because you want to grab more people in the club and not make them feel inferior. So I think that it's very sensitive the way you transmit that. I do think, and I agree with Christians that it's very important to give any feedback not in public but in private.
Thank you. Toastmaster Winters, Toastmaster Aaron, one wants to go first. And please watch your times.
Okay. I would agree with both the previous speakers, but I'm going to concentrate more on the way that we communicate, and that's including the body language. Personally, I love the variety of accents. I think it makes things more interesting. Sometimes it makes you listen more intently, and therefore you listen to the message even more intently than you would do a natural speaker that you're familiar with. I was always taught that there were 3 primary forms of communication, and I would suggest that there's probably 4. When you're using written communication, first of all, it can be the most difficult, because what you actually mean to convey in the word can be misconstrued by the receiver. So written language is quite difficult. When you're doing remote oral language, such as on the telephone, it's the next stage. And again, you have an advantage because you can sometimes interpret the confusion on the other end if someone's not understanding fully what you're saying. When we do face-to-face communication here, we're in an advantage. And the 4th area, which is a more modern, is probably the social media now. But let's concentrate on the face-to-face communication. I think what you can do as English as a second language, and I've noticed this from my own presentations, when I've used an English word and I can see the glazed expressions on the audience, that they haven't understood what I'm actually trying to convey. If you study the body language and the facial expressions of the audience, quite often you can understand that they're not fully receiving the message that you want. So I think body language in our context is probably the most important aspect, because if you learn to use that eye contact, you learn to connect with your audience, hopefully you will learn where you're making mistakes. And I'll give you a personal experience of that. I was in a business meeting and we were selling a product that was a high value product. It was an expensive product. And we had to convince the buyer that it was worth paying something more than a traditional product. They would get value for money, although they were paying something as a premium. And I used the word in front of this American audience that this is a high-end product. And I didn't get the reaction I expected. And afterwards, my colleague who was an American, I said to him, what went wrong there? I used the word high-end. And he said, well, I don't understand what you mean by high-end. Well, in British English, high-end is high value. It's the high end of the market. But over here, it understandably means something different. And I got feedback from him. I never use that word in a future presentation. So it's understanding the connection you have with your audience and having the ability to go back and ask your mentor, which we were talking about earlier, to give you their feedback. And as you say, in private it's probably better than to do it in public because people are naturally quite sensitive when they're talking in a foreign language.
Thank you. What I liked what just happened was that we talk about one common thing, body language, but body language in two ways, from the perspective of the speaker and from looking at the audience and connecting. When I joined this class, I had a hard time looking at the faces of people and concentrating on what I'm speaking. So there's another thing of body language going from the audience and from the speaker. And now the last member, Toastmaster Manta.
Sure. I would also agree with all of the points that were made by everybody else here. However, I would like to, I had them rated, and that was my understanding.
Okay, yes, perfect.
But
Someone
now
follows my direction.
I've changed my mind because I realize that all of these can roll into one thing. To me,
That's the point, to have a one thing out of the whole discussion.
yeah, to me, the most basic thing is to start at the very bottom, at the foundation, which is to feel that you are being listened to. And for that, I would say, whoever, if I'm speaking to someone, and if I feel that I'm being listened to fully, I naturally communicate better. And it helps me have that trust in the other person. And it naturally takes away a lot of my hesitation and second guessing myself, and I'm able to flow very smoothly. And I would like to also mention a little story of my own. I went to college in India, in the southern part of India, and I'm from North India. And people in the southern part of India speak totally different language, and I couldn't understand a thing. One day I was walking outside, going to dinner, and there were all these people who used to work over there as laborers.